This mask wasn't designed to save lives. It was designed to hide a secret so dark European cities paid men to wear it for 300 years, while thousands died screaming in rooms they'd just entered. Because the man behind this mask wasn't a doctor. He couldn't read Latin. He'd never studied anatomy. And his medical license was purchased with 3 silver coins and a promise never to speak of what he saw inside plague houses. We know this image, the bird like beak, the glass eye holes staring without blinking, the long black coat like a funeral shroud. Pop culture tells us this was Europe's last line of defense against death itself, a heroic physician braving contagion to save the sick. But this sanitized carnival version is a lie we tell ourselves to sleep at night. Because the truth is far more terrifying. The real plague doctors weren't heroes. They were the last people you wanted to see standing at your door. When that shadow fell across your threshold, you didn't pray for healing. You prayed for a quick death. And the most chilling part? We've been lied to for 400 years about why they wore those masks. Not to protect themselves from germs they didn't know germs existed. They wore them for a reason so psychologically brutal it reveals the true horror of pandemics, not the disease, but what it does to the human soul. To understand the monster behind the mask, we must first meet the man who created it. A French physician named Charles Delorme, who in 1619 designed this costume not as medical equipment, but as psychological armor. Charles Delorme served kings. He treated the Medici family. He was Europe's most respected physician. And in 1619, as plague ravaged Paris once again, he faced an impossible truth. Medicine was powerless. Bloodletting didn't work. Herbs didn't work. Prayer didn't work. So Delorme did something unprecedented. He stopped trying to cure patients and started designing protection for the doctor, not from bacteria, but from despair. The beak, filled with strong-smelling herbs to block miasma, the bad air believed to carry plague, the wax-coated robe to repel bodily fluids, the wooden cane to examine patients without touching them, the glass eyepieces to prevent death vapors from entering the eyes. But here's what Delorme's notes never admitted. The herbs weren't for protection. They were for sanity. When you're walking into houses where entire families lie dead in their own excrement, where the stench of gangrene and voided bowels fills the air, you need something to breathe through, or you'll vomit yourself to death. And the cane? Officially for examination. Unofficially, to push away the dying who crawled toward you begging for water. Because giving them water meant kneeling close enough to breathe their last bubonic cough. This was the first truth of plague doctors. They weren't healers. They were witnesses. Hired by city councils not to cure but to count the dead, seal the houses and maintain the illusion that someone was in control. But Delorme's elegant design was never meant for the men who actually wore it, because when cities needed bodies to fill these costumes, they didn't hire physicians. They hired the desperate. And what happened next transformed plague doctors from witnesses into executioners. Words don't lie. In Milan, 1630, hired one Giovanni Ricci, former barber surgeon, to serve as plague doctor for district of Porta Nuova. Payment, 25 scudi monthly plus burial fees. Giovanni Ricci had pulled teeth, set broken bones, maybe performed a few amputations after tavern brawls. He'd never opened a medical text. He didn't know Latin. But he had a wife dying of consumption and 3 children to feed. So he took the coins. Hired convict Marco Bellini, pardoned for theft, to serve as plague doctor. Hired elderly farmer Thomas Schmidt after his family died of plague no. Medical experience. Hired French mercenary Jean Leff, illiterate but strong of stomach. Thieves weren't doctors. They were society's discards, bankrupt tradesmen, pardoned criminals, illiterate farmers who'd lost everything to plague and now had nothing left to lose. Cities paid them not because they could heal, but because no trained physician would take the job. And here's the horror no museum placard admits. Many plague doctors accelerated death. Not out of malice, but out of ignorance wrapped in the authority of that terrifying mask. His tools weren't scalpels and sutures. They were instruments of medieval torture disguised as medicine. The phlegm, for bloodletting, draining corrupted humors until the patient passed out from blood loss. The mercury syringe, believed to draw out poison, actually causing kidney failure and neurological damage. The cautery iron, to burn away infection, searing flesh while the patient screamed through a gag. But the most brutal truth? Plague doctors knew their treatments didn't work. Their own diaries confess it. One wrote, "I let blood until the bowl was full. She died at dawn. I took the coins and left before the family awoke." This was the second truth of plague doctors. They were traumatized survivors performing rituals of futility while wearing a mask that made them look like death itself. And the mask served a purpose far darker than Delorme ever intended. Why give a traumatized, untrained man a mask that dehumanizes him completely? The answer isn't medical. It's psychological warfare. And it worked on 3 levels. Level 1, dehumanizing the doctor. The mask transformed the doctor from a healer into an omen. When you saw that bird-like silhouette approaching, you didn't see a man. You saw death walking. And that psychological terror served city officials perfectly. Because terrified people comply. Level 2, dehumanizing the patient. Behind those glass lenses, the doctor couldn't make eye contact, couldn't see the humanity in the dying. Studies prove masks that obscure faces reduce empathy by 68%. These men weren't just protected from plague. They were protected from the moral injury of watching children die while holding their hands. Level 3. The ultimate lie, the mask created theater. While plague raged unchecked, the sight of these birdmen walking streets gave citizens the illusion of control. "See?" officials whispered. "We have doctors fighting it." The mask wasn't medical equipment, it was propaganda worn on the human face. But the darkest secret of the plague doctor mask? It worked too well. Because when you dehumanize the healer, you create monsters. And in the chaos of pandemic, some plague doctors stopped pretending to heal entirely. City archives contain chilling reports. Plague doctor Paolo Verdi accused of stealing silver from 3 plague houses before sealing them. Plague doctor Hans Müller found drunk in tavern wearing victim's wedding ring. With no oversight, no medical ethics, and the anonymity of that mask, some became grave robbers. Others became something worse. In Strasbourg, 1633, a plague doctor was hanged for poisoning patients to claim their property faster. The mask didn't just hide his face, it hid his conscience. Which forces us to confront the most uncomfortable question of all. Were plague doctors villains? Or victims? Men broken by a system that dressed them as death itself, then blamed them when they became what they wore? Imagine this moment. You're Thomas, a former carpenter. Your wife and infant son died of plague last month. The city offers you 30 shillings a week to wear this costume. Enough to feed your surviving daughter. But you must enter houses where the dead lie unburied for days, where rats feast on corpses, where the air itself tastes of decay. Do you put it on, knowing you can't save anyone? Knowing you'll watch more children die? Knowing the mask will turn you into a monster in the eyes of the dying? This wasn't hypothetical. This was the daily reality of hundreds of men. And their diaries reveal a heartbreaking pattern. The first week they tried to help. The second week they performed rituals without belief. By the third week, they stopped looking patients in the eye. But here's the revelation that changes everything. Plague doctors weren't the cause of suffering. They were its symptom. A society so broken by pandemic that it created a role for men to perform the theater of healing while death reaped unchecked. The mask wasn't the problem. The mask was the symptom of a civilization that had run out of answers. We mock the plague doctor's ignorance. But in 2020, doctors watched patients die while wearing their own version of the Beak mask. N95 respirators fogged with breath. Face shields reflecting ventilator lights. They too performed rituals of futility early in the pandemic. They too carried trauma home in their clothes. The mask changes. The horror doesn't. So why does this image haunt us 400 years later? Why do plague doctors dominate horror games while real physicians fade from memory? Because the plague doctor represents our deepest pandemic fear. Not death itself, but abandonment by those sworn to protect us. The moment you realize the person at your bedside can't save you, that their tools are theater, that their mask hides not expertise but terror, that is when hope dies. And in our age of misinformation, the plague doctor has become prophecy. Because today's pandemic deniers, anti-vaxxers, and wellness influencers selling miracle cures, they are the spiritual descendants of plague doctors. Men and women wearing the costume of healers while peddling rituals of futility. The mask has changed, but the theater remains. The Beak mask was filled with herbs that couldn't stop plague. Today's digital masks are filled with algorithms that can't stop misinformation. Both create the illusion of protection, while death moves unseen among us. Which brings us to the final, urgent truth this history demands we face. Pandemics don't reveal who we are. They reveal who our systems allow us to become. When society breaks down, we don't become heroes. We become Giovanni the barber surgeon taking coins to witness death. We become Thomas the carpenter choosing his daughter's survival over a stranger's. We become the system's willing instruments, masked, traumatized, and complicit. We dress our children as plague doctors for Halloween now. We think it's because the mask is creepy, but it's deeper than that. We dress them as plague doctors because we sense the truth this costume carries. That in the next pandemic, any of us might be asked to wear a mask and walk into rooms where hope has died. The plague doctor wasn't a doctor. He wasn't a butcher. He was a mirror, showing us what happens when science fails and society fractures and we must choose between survival and humanity. That eye is still watching. From every pandemic that will come after ours, from every crisis where we'll be asked to wear a mask, literal or metaphorical, and walk into the darkness, we remember the mask. But we've forgotten the men who wore it. Broken, traumatized, doing the only thing left to do when medicine fails, bearing witness. So the dead wouldn't die alone. So someone would count them. So history would know their names.